Hey YouTube, this is Rushika. I'm really sorry guys, I know it's been pretty long time since I made the last video, but without wasting any more time, let me directly jump into this video. So if you remember correctly, I was trying to make the series of data stage video tutorials. So we were done with the database stages, the file stages, and most of the processing stages. And now we were trying to make a series of videos on the development or the debug stages. I think we were done with column generator, column generator stage, head stage, sample, and tail stages. So the ones which we were left with are peak, row generator, and right range map. So in this particular video, at this point of time, I'll be dealing with the peak stage. So the peak stage would be my 41st video tutorial in the series of the data stage video tutorials. So obviously it's pretty obvious, it's the development of the debugging stage, right? You're trying to debug something, or you're trying to know what went wrong or where it went wrong. So that's the reason it's placed under the development of the debug stage. And if you remember, I say in every video that the data stage, the icons and the naming, the stage naming has pretty importance, right? Because that might not tell you whole about the functionality of the whole stage, but it can just lay a path for you to explore more about that stage, right? So whenever you say like the column generator, it means that the stage is helping you to generate the columns. Row generator, it's row, head, or something. So everything has its own meaning, right? You need not really, it's not a rocket science to know I mean, it's not about the whole functionality of the stages, but it's the basic functionality I'm talking about. Okay, so the same thing goes with the peak stage too. As a peak means in general, like the common English, peak means we're trying to see something, right? So it's the same thing here. As the name suggests, we are just trying to sneak into the data stage job, whatever the job is, and trying to see the output. It doesn't matter what output, it may be the final output or the intermediate output. So we are just trying to sneak into the data stage job and trying to see the output, intermediate or the final output of that particular job. Okay, so that is where this peak stage comes in. So you might be wondering why I need peak stage. Why can't I write it to file and see how the output looks like, right? It makes sense, that makes sense too, but what if the data is like really large, or the volume is really large, and something is and you want to see the intermediate output before it is written to the final stage. Okay, so if you write it to your file, that's again the performance point of view, right? Because you're trying to write the whole volume to your file. Just, it's of no use, you're just trying to see how the data is going to the output, right? The file, writing to your file, it's again a performance issue. So to avoid that, they introduce a peak stage. It's very good in the point of performance when you have like huge amount of data, or when you're trying to see what's happening with the intermediate stages, and how the output is being generated in the intermediate stages with all the functionalities, all the transformations written, all those things. Okay, so I'll give you an example and explain and clear more about that, but let me just give you a brief idea about what the stage properties and what might be the links thing and all that things. Okay, so the peak stage, it does accept one input link and multiple output links. So it can be like it can have like single input link and no output links, or single input link and multiple output links, or single input link and just one output link. It doesn't matter, but the easiest way is it can have one single input link and multiple output links. It can be at the same time or at different times, it doesn't matter, but it can accept that. Okay, and so what can you say when people ask about the peak stages? It basically helps in understanding or viewing the output of a complex function or the transformation written before something is written to the output, or you just want to see the intermediate output. Okay, so it's very helpful while we are debugging a specific job, or that specific stage, or in fact the specific rule. Okay, so it's very helpful in that way. It can be it's basically the peak stage can be used to view the basically it can break down to the lowest granularity. Okay, so let's get into the properties of the peak stage. So the peak stage has not a lot of properties in fact, so we just have few. So rows properties. So in the rows function it has all records after skip. So by default it's always false. So what does this mean is, okay, so let me, because it says after skip and per partition, let me first explain these things. So period per partition, and the other option is skip per partition. Okay, so all records after skip means whenever, if it has this, if you're trying to skip a few records, you're not interested, let's say you have 10 records but you're not interested in seeing the first 4 records, you're interested in seeing only the record starting from 5th, okay, so then you can skip 4. Okay, I mean it's not 4 because it's per partition, right? Sorry, my bad, it's per partition, so it skips 4 records per partition. So let's say you have 20 records and you have like 2 partitions, so 10 records and 10 records based on the partition technique again, right? It's interdependent. So based on the partition technique, let's say you have 10 and 10, so when you say 4, the first 4 records on the first partition and the first 4 records on the second partition are just skipped. So ultimately you will be getting like 6 from the first partition and the 6 from the second partition, so you'll be writing 12 to the 12, only 12 records will be written. Okay, so it's asking all records after skip, so false means if it's false, then it has an it has a mutual property called number of records per partition. If it's true, if it's set to true, you're basically saying that, oh, I want all the records after the skip function is executed, right? So it doesn't make sense to choose the number of records per partition. Okay, so that's the thing. And number of records per partition, everything is per partition here, okay, remember that everything is like based on the partition, not the whole records, but per partition. Okay, so now that we are done with this, last one is period per partition. Period per partition means basically, let's say you do not want to write all records but you want to write only those records that follow a certain pattern. Okay, so then this option comes into action. For example, let's say you have like 10 records and you're not keen to see the output of and you are not trying to see all the records but just trying to see every output of every third record, let's say. So in this case the period per partition will be 3. So it is the important thing is I think I have dealt with this option in the previous debug stages too. But whenever you say that, okay, let's say you have 3, so the 10 records, right, 10 records per partition, so it does not write 3, 6, 9 that way. It is mandatory that it does write the first record, and then after the first record it writes every third record, because see here, prints every nth row per partition starting with the first. So first record will be written, like it's compulsory to write the first record. Okay, so now when you say 3 here for the 3 and number of records are 10, then first record will be written, and then the 4th record, then 7th record, and the 10th record. So 4 records will be written to the output, okay, per partition from one partition. So the same with the other partition too. Okay, so yep, it's not a lot of properties, it's pretty simple. You can just figure out yourself too, but yeah, just saying. And the next option is columns. So the only option which we have under the columns property is peak all input columns is equal to true. So the peak all input columns means it's pretty obvious. It's trying to ask, basically it's asking you to customize the columns you'd like to see. Let's say you have like 100 fields but you're having issues with only 3 fields or so, then you need not write all the 100 fields. You can just choose only those 3 instead of writing all those 100, right? By default it's always true, but see, if you want to write if you want to see only input column to peak, yeah, you can choose that. And whenever you say false, you can choose any number of columns. You can just choose the field name from the drop down in here. Okay, so those fields only will be able to peak. That's about the columns properties. And the other option is here is partitions. So all partitions, so it's same thing as rows and columns too. It's basically trying to filter out, like you can remember it as like the filtering out. It's trying to see if all, if you don't want all, if it's trying to ask, okay, which one you are trying, which one are you interested in. So it's basically like the filter function, right? So all partitions means it just pulls the records from all the partitions, how, no matter how many partitions you have, it just pulls the records. If you're not interested in that case, it does have the false function, which is like the, it's not the default. So the false function, then it asks you for the partition number. So basically you can customize what partition, which rows and columns to be written. So the default value is true, which means all records will be taken from all the partitions. But when you want to see the records that are written to specific partition, set to false and give the partition name. Like when you see the range partition or hash, we define the range or the key field, right? So based on that, we can choose which partition we want to have and analyze the output of those records from that specific partition. Okay, so that's about the partition property. And the other thing is option. We don't have much here too, we just have 3. So let me start with this thing, peak records. This is an optional one, but these 2 are like the options which are by default, but you can change them too. Okay, so the simple one thing is show column names is equal to okay, let me start with this, I'm sorry. So peak records output more job logs. So the important thing in here is, I was talking about like you can directly write to peak without writing to a file, right? But yeah, in a way it's true, but you can write to the file too. Okay, let me show. So peak records output mode. So you're trying to job log, and you have 2 options, job log and output. So after all the customization of the records, the fields like the records, fields and the partitions, now you need to choose where you want to write the records to, right? You can choose if you want to write to a job log, which is like in the detector, or the, I mean, you can have the job log, just job log, say just job log. So you can, if you want to write it to a job log, which is a common option, and the other one is you can write it to an output file, and the file will have not all the records, but file will have like the peak records column. It called the peak, the file, the record will be named as peak records column. So that field will be written to the file. That field, that only field will be written to the file. Okay, so that's how it's written. That's how this property is meant. So most of the times it's always job log because it's pretty easy, right? And yeah, sometimes I don't know, sometimes people might use output too. So yeah, basically you can write to job log or output, and I'll show you an example of that too. But for now, yeah, you have 2 options. And the other thing is show column names. Show column names is true, is it's default, it's set to true. It means that it shows the column names, whatever the input columns you're trying to pick, it does show their column names. But if you set to false, if you set to false, it does not show any columns, it just gives the values of those fields. Okay, so yeah. And the other thing is delimiter string. So delimiter string is, so delimiter string means basically whenever the fields, or whenever the output is written to the like the job log, or the output, so it basically have like the every field is separated by a space. But let's say you don't want to separate that field by a space, but you want to do something else, like the comma, or like tab, or something. Okay, so that's, or the semicolon or something. Okay, so then you can choose your own delimiter string just to see like how you want to separate the field column names. Okay, column names are the fields basically. Okay, so that's about the delimiter string. And so yep, that's all the properties we have. Yep, that's all the properties we have. So let me okay, so I said P can have single output link, a single input link, and multiple output links, right? So now you might be wondering why I want to have multiple output links. Why can't I write it to a single input link? Because it's after all a peak stage, right? Now the interesting part in here is, if you choose like multiple output links, you can customize them basically. So let's say you want to peek a specific data, and also you want to create a file of the whole data which you can use for some other process, like some other downstream process. Okay, so by pulling out the multiple output links you can do that. So let's say what I'm trying to say is, let's say you have 10 records. So of those 10 records you're trying to using all these properties. Okay, okay, let's say you have a number of records per partition is 10, so on the whole you'll be having 20, right? So but you have this properties to skip per partition. So let's say you have 4, you're skipping 4, so obviously it's going to be 6 per partition, right? So it's going to be 12. So you're interested in seeing only 12 records on one link. However, you also want to write the whole set of data to another link, other output link, right? Because the one which you have here, okay, this only happens if you write it to the output. Okay, so the one which you have here, you can again do it like not this, but you can just put the transformer here and do something. You can use the whole, you have the whole data here, right? So once you have the whole data here, you can use it for something else, right? But this is the one which have only a part of data, which is like basically the peaked output. Okay, so this is like whole data and this is the peaked output. So this is pretty interesting, right? So yeah, we can do that using a peak stage. Okay, so yep, that's all. Okay, yeah, in the show columns thing, yeah, I forgot to say one thing. In the show column names, it's always set to true. So when it is true, the column names show up followed by a colon. Okay, it is separated by it's basically like column name, value, and then colon, and again a column name and value separated by space and then colon. So if just fields are separated by space. So if it's false, the fields are again separated by space, but there will be no column names. Okay, that's all. And if you don't want to separate the fields by space or something other than that, yeah, you can use a delimiter string. Okay, and yep, that's pretty much about the properties of the peak stage. Now let me just get into an example to deal with how we use peak stage. Okay, so here is an example. I mean, it's not real. I'm really sorry, guys. It's not really a good example, but I'm just showing you the functionality. Never mind about this all the whole crap job basically. So just focus on the peak stage. Okay, peak stage and its functionalities. I just want to show that I I really don't have basically a good job that makes really sense for now. So yeah, let's go with this for now. Okay, so basically I'm reading from the Oracle stage and aggregating based on the department ID, I guess. Oh, sorry. Yeah, aggregation is department ID and my grouping field is department number. So and in the transformer, what I'm doing is I'm just giving some stupid function, stupid if then else statement. It's already aggregated, right? It's already grouped, right? So it doesn't really make sense, but still I'm just like giving the stupid function just for the sake of to show you the peak about the peak stage. Okay, so now, and I added other two dummy columns like test and test 2. So just like the integer and the varchar fields. And now this is the peak stage. Okay, this ds link 28, this is the peak field. Okay, let me rename this field name field peak. Okay, so this is the peak field. Okay, so out of these 3 fields, I'm not interested in these 2, but I'm just interested in only the first field, the department number. I just want to see if the department number, if this is being written as per the function, or is something going wrong with that thing. Okay, I just want to see that. So that is okay, sorry, nope. Okay, yep. So this is where I have okay, and everything. So I just want to see the output before it is written to the output. Before it is written to the sequential file. Let's say for that specific field where I have written some really stupid if then else function. Let's say you found that the field is in the output, that field is having not the department number but some stupid values like 0. Okay, so and I really don't know what's happening in the sequential, or I'm not really sure if something is wrong with my statement in here, or something went wrong when this is written to the sequential file stage. Okay, something is going on with the sequential file stage. Okay, so what I can do is I can just drag a output link basically and write it to the peak stage. Okay, so when I write to the peak stage and go into the properties, so number of records per partition, okay, let's say 10 or something. Okay, everything let's leave it to the default. Okay, now when I just run the job, let's see what happens. So run it. So yeah, so out of the 14 rows from the input, the 3 rows are it's aggregated and output is so just 3 rows. So the 3 and 3. Okay, so see the same record count is written to the peak stage. Okay, so now where can I see the values? What did I say? The peak records output mode is job log, right? So I need to check my director to see my values from the peaks. So this is my job log. Please ignore these warnings. As I said, I just did something stupid, and I really don't have to check into this warnings. So we are just concerned with the peak thing, right? So whenever you say peak, so field peak is a field name, right? So field peak, because we said show column names, we set everything to default, right? So everything to default means show column names is true. So this is the column name separated by a colon and then 5. Okay, and same here. So if you observe here, I have like peak and peak, right? So these are the two peaks, job logs, peaks things job in the job log, right? Why do you have two? Is it's because of the partitions. Okay, because I have two partitions, I see like different things, and because there are only 3 rows, 2 fields are written to one partition and third field is written to the second partition, but it is still the same format, right? So yeah, that's what happens in the peak stage. So yeah, when you say it's written to the job log, this is what happens in the peak stage. So you can just come over to the director, or you can just directly see it in the designer too, wherever the job log you can open. So you can see if now this is the value you are expecting, yeah, it's good. So now you know that the transformer is giving out the values which you want to have, but something is going on with the sequential. So you can now focus all your resources or direct all your resources toward the sequential file stage and see what's going on. Okay, so yeah, that's how you can debug using the peak stage. Now let's say you have some other thing. So now let's say okay, you want to have the peak to the, I mean, you want to have the peak thing, and you also want to have the whole file data, whole data basically. So just to do it for the further analysis or something like that. Okay, so let's say you have, it's not just stopping, the job is not just stopping here, but it has some other things. So there is no sequential file here. Let's say that for now. Okay, let's say there is no sequential file here, and you have some other like let's say you have filter and something like all the complex job. Okay, but you want to have the whole data before it's going to the filter. You want to have the whole data, right? So, and you also want to have the peak stage. So when you want that, what happens is you can just pull out the two fields, two output links, and just put okay, and just put the two sequential files here. Okay. Okay. So, okay, let me just rearrange the job. It doesn't really make sense. Okay, so this is how I change the job. Okay, so before we have seen that the job log, the output of the peak is written to job log, right? So now let's say if it's written to output, because what did I say? The interesting part is whenever you say the thing is written to output, you can have like you can customize the output, you can customize the output links from the peak stage, right? So one link can be like the whole data, and the other link can be like just the peak data, or whatever you want to have. Like let's say I asked the peak stage to skip one row per partition. Okay, so it gonna skip, let's how many rows we have in total. In before we have 3 rows, right? So 3 rows, once one row will be skipped per partition, so 2 rows on one partition and 1 row on one partition. And when I say skip one row per partition, so the first partition which has 2 rows will have only 1 row now, and the second partition which has 1 row will be skipped completely. Okay, so ultimately we'll be getting only 1 row to the output. So, and what about the other one is all the 3 rows will be written. So why is this useful is, let's say you're trying to do it to filter. You might be wondering, why can't I just, sorry, why can't I just drag and put a stage here and just drag all the output, right? So this is useful when let's say when you have like something like something like lookup or something after that, and then after this you wanna join or something, and then you wanna do something with the thing here and here. Let's say you wanna join these two. Okay, so it is helpful, right? You're just dragging the output and you're just trying to join. Like basically it's you can do that too. I mean, it's not that you need to do, but yeah, it's an option. It's an option, so you can do that, right? So yeah, you can. It's the basic thing which I want to tell you is, it's not that we can just write whatever the peak, only the peak fields, but we can have the whole data from the, we can write the whole data from the peaks too, while writing to the while just writing the peak stage too. I don't know if I'm really confusing you, but yeah, that's what it is. Okay, so now I just wrote the filter conditions here, so yeah, it doesn't really matter. So let me just run the job. Okay, okay, so out of the 14 rows in here, 3 rows are aggregated. Okay, so 3 rows are going to the filter, and again the same 3 rows are coming to the peak stage 2, right? Of these 3 rows, okay, okay, so out of the peak stage, one sequential file is getting written with 3 rows, and the other is getting written with just 1 row, right? This 3 rows is the whole data, so now we can consume this file. This is the whole file, right? So now we can consume this file, or we can see the data how it looks like. And this thing is after the skip partition is executed, right? So yeah, so now let's see how the field in that thing gonna look like. So see, so field name, then colon, and then field value. When you have the other field, let's say you have another field too, so it's gonna be like field peak, and then 5, and then space, and again field 2 colon and value. So it's the same thing, it's value, and it's the same thing field 3. So it's everything is separated by a space. If let's say there are no field names, okay, so it's gonna be like 5 and xxx and space and ttt and field names, just like the field values. So everything will be separated by spaces. So this is how you expect the output from the field peak. Okay, so now let's see how the data is written in this whole data. Okay, So see, it's the same thing, right? How the data normally will be written. So same thing. So that's it, just the whole data, right? So so yeah, that's all in the peak stage. So I hope I really struggled a bit to explain this, friends. So I'm not sure if everyone got it. If not, just try to watch one more. I know it's my fault, but still, I don't know if I explain it again and again. I'm not sure if I gonna make it clear or if I gonna confuse you more and more. So I'm just gonna stop here and let you decide yourself. So basic, it's not much of a big deal because it's just a peak stage. So you just need the basic functionality and the properties to know, which is mostly the job or the job log here. Yeah, the output too, but mostly people use job log. So yep, that's all we have in this peak stage. So next video I'll be dealing with probably right range map or row generator, or I'm thinking of like doing a little what do I say, doing little task videos too, like the simple task, not the really complex functionalities, but just starting with a simple task in between, so that the real time things can happen simultaneously on the same track, so we can just get updated with that too. So yeah, I'll do that. Probably I'm gonna make a task video next, and then complete the row generator and right range map, and then we'll jump on to the remaining processing stages like SCD or surrogate key generator, or yeah, whatever are remaining. Okay, thank you, friends. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll try to post videos as soon as possible from now on. So yep, that's all. Thanks for all for watching.